All right, Richie, let's get into it. Scrimmage this week, which is exciting. Hey, how about this? People are. Have you read anything about the scrimmage? Have you talked to anybody about it? Have you looked at anything? Like before I get into kind of what I've been told, we dropped some news and notes in the Discord. Honestly, not a ton of stuff, but have you? What are your thoughts before we go into it real deep?
Yeah, first scrimmage of the season. I wasn't expecting much, and I didn't hear much, to be honest. Even the reports that I read, um, it sounds like DJ has taken uh, really a firm grasp of the offense for the most part. Really excited to see what guys like Benson and Jalen Lucas and Roydell Williams in them end up turning into. I just think it's so early, and it was probably their second day in pads was the first scrimmage, so not a whole lot to take away on my end, but I know you probably have a little more nuggets to share.
Yeah, let me also correct really quickly. It's not Lake County. Sorry, I know there's some comments on that. It's the Lake Sumter Seminole Club that is on. Oh yeah, that's still really close though. So yeah, hit me on Twitter. Yeah,
Kenny's tournament is in Lake County in Mount Dora.
Lake County's massive. So all right, so I won't waste a ton of time while we're talking about the scrimmage. But yeah, shoot me a Harlan, please try and remind me before we get off here. I'll tell everybody about the Lake Sumter Seminole Club event on Saturday night, and if you're not tuned in for that, just hit me on Twitter and DM me, and I'll get you the info. So, all right, yeah, scrimmage news. All right, people were freaking out and upset, and this, that, and the other because it didn't sound like a great scrimmage. And I will say this. Most of the scrimmages over the last couple of years have been really, really good. I think it was either last year, it was either 2023 or 2022. Like the second fall scrimmage wasn't good. Like the first one actually started out really, really well. They were like, man, which is expected. And then I think it was kind of just a little, I didn't go back and look at notes or try to remember back to calls from that long ago. But I want to say like the second one, like people just weren't focused. Like the first one went so well and camp had been going so well that the second one, like, I don't know if it was lack of focus or just lackadaisical or just like, man, this is dumb. Why are we doing this type stuff? But it just didn't go super, super well. This one, not Florida State's best, but, I think that the problem is with it from a big picture perspective is that most of the updates we hear from Norvell, like I don't think Norvell plays the game that Jimbo played. When Jimbo would be like, if it was a bad practice, he would talk about how good it was. And if it was a good practice, he would just crap on the team. Like, I don't know, playing like motivational psycho head games or whatever, which worked, right? Like that's not really a shot at Jimbo. Like that stuff I think worked and got the team to really like play up and do really well. So, but I don't think Norvell does that. But I do think that like most practices are really sharp. Most scrimmages are really good, like kind of clicking on all cylinders. And so when you hear that one isn't like upper level, you're just like, man, what's going on? What are their issues? What are their problems? And so from the couple people that I talked with that were at the scrimmage, and I'll tell you this, my normal guys that are normally there, one had kind of a, not emergency, but just couldn't be there last minute. And then one just didn't ask to go. So, I had to kind of get some stuff and not as much as normally do. And the feedback that I got was, first of all, that it was so sparse and so limited on who actually played and who actually participated in it. A lot of guys dressed out. A lot of guys played a series or two. And that was it. Like there were a ton of young guys. Like Darius didn't play. Byers, like a lot of the offensive line didn't play. A lot of the offensive line was really young. I heard the offensive line started pretty poorly. I think that just due to the fact that most of the guys in there were not starters. I don't think that they're doing kind of what they did last year with so many guys. I think they're, playing like that NFL model where they let the stars sit out. I think there were a lot of guys sitting out last year just because they kind of were told like, yeah, you're not going to have to go hard and fall because we know what you're going to bring to the table. I don't think that's as much of the case. I just think they want to see young guys. And so with that, the offensive line wasn't sharp to start. I think they got going later. I think the experience depth on the defensive line, you've got guys who have played a lot of snaps there. Whereas your young guys like Carmella and stuff on the offensive line, like guys like that and Early and others, like they haven't played a crap ton of snaps in real life. And so that's to be expected. They did pull it together later. The offensive line got better as the night went along. But defensive line was a bright spot. Your starter, like your big guys, didn't play. Like Pat wasn't. I don't think Pat was out there. Farmer Jackson doing really anything, which is fine with me. I don't really care if they don't get into any scrimmages. That doesn't, like those three specifically. I just don't. That doesn't bother me at all. DJ was fine. I think that. I don't think DJ was great, but I don't think it was anything that he was doing that was wrong. I think he was fine, right? I think that the wide receivers let him down at times with drops, which is frustrating, and probably the biggest concern I have right now with the team in general and just practice and scrimmages lately. Drops continue to be mentioned. We heard them mentioned in the spring, and then we watched the spring game where drops, we probably have 4 or 5 of them. And so that's been a consistent theme. That's probably my biggest concern on the entire team. And it was the biggest concern coming out of the scrimmage, right? And it wasn't just, your 4th and 5th string wide receivers are dropping the ball. I think it was everybody, and I'm not going to sit here and call out names or say this guy had this many or this guy had that many, but I think it was consistently like this guy had 1 or 2, or this guy had 1 or 2, or this guy had 1, it was kind of a plethora of, you just got to be better and just drops, right? Like, not like, Earl Little jumps in and breaks up a pass and we call that a drop, like a straight drop. And that's got to get better, right? You've got 3 or 4 or 5 drops within a scrimmage. You think about what 5 drops in a game would do to you. I mean, just would be detrimental, right? And so it's got to get better. I don't really know how. There was some rebounding. I heard Jalen Lucas had a really nice day after making kind of a big mistake. He was really good kind of toward the end of practice. I think he had a couple of long plays, kind of not simultaneously, but just like back to back. It was either 2 and 3 or 2 and 4 or something, like just kind of back to back big plays. Norvell talked about the really long drive. If the guy that I chatted with kind of, we both have played a good bit of the NCAA video game that's come out, and he kind of was just like, it's like one of those drives where you're just literally trying to use up the entire first half. That's what it felt like, because it was just like 5-6 yards, 5-6 yards, 2-3 yards, 5-6 yards, 5-6 yards, like no, and it was like I think Norvell said it was a 20 play drive. Some of that I've been told was like, I've been told was like, move back a little, penalty, this, that, like work your way back up. Sometimes he's pretty strategic with how those work. But yeah, 20 play, 97-yard drive, and they converted on several third downs there, which was good, but they were like 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3s, like where, the team is going to convert more often than not. So I'll get right back to chatting about the scrimmage with Richie. But first, let me give some love to our friends over at Got Spears. Right now, they have a discount code at gotspears.com. It's TAKE50, TAKE50. It'll get you $50 off all 6-foot spears, gator heads, and rush charges. Make sure that you are shopping gotspears.com. If you're going up there this year for a game to Tallahassee, save on shipping. Let him know what game you're going to, and he will hold your spear for him. Give him about 2 weeks heads up. Don't be texting him on the Friday before game day, but he will get you taken care of. My guy John does a phenomenal job. These are the best spears in the game. They've got some turquoise ones going now. You'll certainly enjoy it. Gotspears.com, take 50 for $50 off most items. The link is in the description. Wide receiver has to get better. Offensive line, it was young guys. I don't know how much you can really take away from there. Defensive backs were a plus. I think, everybody kind of mentioned Rawls playing really well, but I think a lot of the youth in the defensive secondary played really, really well last night. Again, when you only have to make plays on every other play because guys are dropping the ball, then maybe your job's a little bit easier. But I do think that, defensive back was kind of a bright spot, and I think Florida State's really confident in their defense. Cam Riley, somebody whose name was brought up to me, just not necessarily in the scrimmage, but just all week, had somebody who has kind of shined, and I think they're really excited about and might, really, really physical. I think people really expect a lot of Murphy. I don't know where we're at with Sean Murphy, just not a name that I've, asked about a ton, but I mean, Murphy could, Cam Riley could end up being your second starting linebacker. So we'll see. There's a couple of weeks left in fall. So, I don't know that we're there right now. Again, a lot more depth over on the defensive side of the ball was what another person told me, and thought that that's kind of why they looked a little bit better. It's also early in fall camp, so that defense looking better is almost always the case. And then the other person I talked with said, kind of reemphasized, DJ looked pretty good. Just was kind of let down a lot by guys making boneheaded drops or dumb plays or whatever. Last person I chatted with said hard to take away a ton, but with a bunch of guys out of the lineup, you're going to get mixed results like this. There were people talked about there were penalties, there were false starts, there were procedural things. Again, when you got a bunch of new guys in there, it's hard to. I mean, you certainly don't like that. You're not like, oh well, that's fine. Good that it happened. You're not thrilled with it, but when there's a bunch of young guys in there and it's not like the unit, the normal top 5 offensive linemen that you would normally have, then maybe you don't freak out as much about it. But those are kind of that's kind of what I was hearing through it, right? So a bunch of maybe that stands out, maybe something in there will stand out to somebody, maybe it just sounded like a big rambled mess. But I was taking notes while I was on the phone last night and this morning, and that's what I came away with. So any questions, any thoughts, Richie? I feel like I've been talking for an hour now.
No, I feel like, typically you have 3 scrimmages in fall camp. The first one is kind of what you alluded to. It's a lot of, younger guys getting a lot more reps. I think the second one is typically the most important scrimmage because the third one's a lot like the first one where, if you have guys that are banged up, you're not even going to risk playing them. You're just going to, go with whoever's available. The second scrimmage, I think that's what I'm most looking forward to because I do think that is the most important one in terms of telling us, what we will have. Echoing your point, man, wide receiver, you don't just need one person to step up. You need like 2 to 3 guys to step up.
Sure.
I do believe in DJU. I think he's going to be a fine quarterback. And I do think there's a lot of potential in that wide receiver room, but you need to see it. Like we have not seen it from them before. So now you need to see them step up. I love our linebacker or running back room. I love our offensive line. I think our tight ends will be just fine, but those receivers, again, echoing your point, TJ, we need someone and more than one person to step up at that position.
Yeah, it's got to get, and I think, if I had to guess it right now, I think you're looking at a situation where you probably got Benson, Ja'Kai Douglas, Kyle Morlock, Jalen Lucas in some, I mean, he's there, but like, I almost think like if you're really focusing on, like who your top options are, right? Like, I mean, I think it comes, I don't even know if this is not me doubting Kentron. There's a long way to go, but yeah, like your top 3 options to me as pass catchers are probably Ja'Kai Douglas in no order, Malik Benson and Kyle Morlock.
You need Benson to be one of the 2 that I was talking about. He has to take that next step. If he does, this offense could be deadly with his speed.
Yeah, and if somebody else, if a Hakeem or a Kentron or somebody like that can step up, man, I think you're in really good shape. And I think at that point you're like, okay, well we've got this. And so if not, then I think, you may struggle, right? And what does that mean? Well, I don't think you're going to, we're going to break down all the games that are on the schedule right now in a minute anyway. But I don't think that means you lose a lot more games. I just think you're going to play a little bit closer, right? Instead of beating Georgia Tech by 14 or 17, maybe even by 10, right? Because you got to keep dropping in a situation. You instead of beating Boston College by 24, maybe you beat them by 20, right? Or maybe you beat them by 17, and it's a 10-point game going to the fourth quarter, right? And so I don't know. I don't think it's like, oh, well, you lose way more games or anything like that. Instead of beating Miami by 7, maybe you beat them by 3, right? I don't know. But you just, you lose. I mean, you lose critical possessions if you can't hold on to the ball. And so you've got to see some guys step up and, it ain't me and Richie that got to go out there and catch the ball. It's these kids that are playing.
Thank God.
Yeah, we'll see if and how and I do trust Norvell to be able to scheme around that. I mean, I don't know that I don't know that our wide receiver development over the last 10 years has been elite by any means. And that's not just, a shot at Dugans or anybody else. Like, I don't think we've done a great job with wide receivers, really getting the most out of them. And so, maybe that starts to change at some point. Maybe we put a little more emphasis there. Maybe we put a focus on it. And some of these, we've recruited really highly talented guys. I mean, Hakeem was 5. There's a lot of 4 stars in that room right now. We got to get better there, and the talent is there. It's can we get them along? Drops though, like, to me, drops are a thing that are, like a Mike Evans, a top 5 wide receiver in the league, still like kind of struggles with drops at times. Like, I don't think you really get better with that. I think you just kind of play through it and make plays to make up for it. And a lot of times he does. Mike Evans will drop
10 of all time.
Yeah,
He's a top 10 all-time receiver.
yeah, and he's probably top 10 in drops too. You know, like he just is. But like he'll drop a pass, he'll drop like a 30-yard pass, then he'll catch a 70-yard pass the next play for a touchdown. Yeah. Mike did a pretty good job of making up for those kind of things, you know, and so I don't know. I feel like drops are the kind of thing that like once you got him, you got him. You know, it's hard to really shake that. Even Mike being as great as he is, you know, it probably still hasn't shaken it completely. So